Sitting in Northern California, we have Sameer Sharma, who has the rather impressive title of Global General Manager, Citizen Transportation for IoT Solutions at Intel. And he's an acknowledged thought leader in the IoT mobile ecosystem. He leads a global team that incubates and scales new growth categories and business models for Intel in IoT and smart cities. And those solutions include intelligent transportation, AI video, air quality monitoring, and smart lighting. Intel's drive in each of these solutions is to provide local governments with a rich resource of data to enhance the daily quality of life for citizens, while at the same time promoting responsible practices to protect the environment. Sameer holds an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and a master's in computer engineering from Rutgers. And even more impressively, Sameer, and I never knew this till now, you actually hold 11 patents in the areas of IoT and mobile, and is actually also a rather good chap and a very good conversationalist. So Sameer, did you get a chance to listen to any of Engineer Arif's speech?
I did, and it was very impressive. I think the pragmatic nature of some of the things that were brought up really resonated with me. I wish we could have these kind of transparent conversations in every part of the world, and glean some of the best known practices and be able to pull them together and then share them globally. So it was a pleasure to be at least listening to Engineer Arif over video. Of course, nothing beats being in the same room and being able to exchange those views candidly and more informally. But given the constraints, I think we did the best we could by coming to you through video. So thank you for making me part of this conversation today.
So Sameer, I'm going to get to some other questions that we've talked about before, but I actually don't mind starting with the notion that when it comes to smart cities, the technologists overpromise and perhaps underdeliver. How do you respond to that?
I think if you look at any kind of technology-based transition, we go through this sort of graph of excitement, a little bit of disappointment, and then we come out of the trough of the disappointment to talk about what is pragmatically possible. I mean, I can give you multiple examples from my own career, my own experience. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, as a young engineer, I was working on some of the programmability within the network infrastructure, and there was this notion that the entire internet would become completely programmable, completely agile, adaptable overnight, and we all invested based on that assumption. Now that transition did happen. And when it happened, it had massive impact. It had massive disruption in a positive sense. But the timing was off. So I think we sometimes tend to overestimate how quickly a technology transition will happen. But we almost always also underestimate how far-reaching the consequences will be. And I think in a strange way, COVID sort of shone a bit of a spotlight on that, because years of conversations we were having and excuses we were making for why this cannot be done or that cannot be done suddenly became possible overnight. A good example is the healthcare in the US. It is notoriously slow to adapt to technology. And I'm sharing this as a bit of a personal example. And telemedicine was something that we would hear about in other parts of the world, but it was very hard to adopt it in the US because, of reasons of litigation and many other factors, right, including extensive approvals required. Well, COVID happened and suddenly there was no option but to adopt telemedicine. So all those excuses, all those very rational reasons not to adopt technology suddenly disappeared, and we found this avalanche of adoption of technology very rapidly. And it was very personal for me because, my older son, he fell sick at the start of COVID and we were very concerned, and it was impossible to get a doctor's appointment. But because we had telemedicine option available, we were able to consult with the doctor in a matter of a couple of hours and sort of put our minds at ease. And I could imagine that scenario playing out in families, with kids, with grown-ups, adults all over the world. And the positive impact technology can have, because now you finally say, okay, enough words, let's convert these words into action and adopt the technology. So these are two examples to say, look, yes, there will be some level of mismatch between the excitement of what technology can do and the reality of what we're able to adopt and deploy at scale. But that's to some extent to be expected. It's not to be excused, but it's to be expected and factored in how quickly we believe we can deploy and scale.
Okay, so you, Sameer, take a global view. Is it actually possible to talk about standards for the implementation of smart city technologies which are replicable, scalable, and readily adoptable? It sounds to me like a little bit of one size fits all, which doesn't kind of jive with my sense of the world.
You're absolutely spot on. When we talk about the deployment of smart cities technology, I think we have to factor in the reality that every city in the world has different demographics. It has different, when it comes to the state of infrastructure, things look different. The policies, the cultural expectations, all of these have to be factored in. So yes, from a technology perspective, I would love to be able to create one blueprint and deploy it exactly the same way in different parts of the world. The fact is, we are all unique, our cities are unique, and we need to we need to find common themes, but we need to be able to customize to the needs of every city. The way I like to describe it is, we need to horizontalize the building blocks, but we need to hyper customize the implementation. Which of these building blocks and how they get adopted will be different for different parts of the world. What that means is, it's incumbent on us as technology providers and our partners, system integrators, OEMs, ODMs, to utilize technology that's truly open and standards based. And yes, there is the fear of competition when you open up everything to an open standard, but it's also an opportunity. So we really have to think about standards adoption as a rising tide that lifts everyone and accelerates the deployment of these technologies. And going back to your first question, helps us match the pace of deployment to the expectations we've set up in terms of what this technology can do. You talked about the global nature. I was reflecting, as engineer Arif was talking about all the pragmatic challenges, I was zooming out a little bit. If you look globally and you say how many people are moving into urban areas, the amount of urban population we are creating globally is about 3.5 million every week. That's the population of Dubai. So every 1 to 2 weeks globally, we are creating a new Dubai. Now, we may not feel it because it's not all happening in one place. It's happening step by step in the major urban, dense centers of the world. But it is happening. And you see the impact of that, right? In terms of the impact on quality of life, whether it's traffic congestion, poor air quality, lack of affordable housing. So all of these are shared global concerns. And I think the way we solve that is by pulling together not just technology, but technology combined with the right policies, the right leadership and decision-making framework, and finally a sense of cooperation amongst the private sector players, where they're competing but also collaborating with each other, and a deep sense of collaboration between the public and private sector. Because if we don't do this, we all lose, including our citizens. If we do this well, we all win, including our citizens.
Thanks. Earlier, at the very beginning of the presentation, everyone loves league tables. So I don't know if you tuned in, and in the last smart city rankings, based on a whole host of criteria, Dubai came in number 29th. Singapore and Oslo, not that anyone would really want to live in Oslo, and others, appeared above. Any advice to Dubai as to how they might improve their league position in the next round?
Wow, that's I don't know if I'm well qualified to give that advice, but I'll try. I'll try my best. Look, um, these competitions are good in that they spur a conversation. They spur us to sort of move faster. But ultimately, for me, the right criteria for a smart city, even though smart equals technology in a lot of people's minds, it's not about smartness. It's about the happiness of its citizens. So if I could rebrand smart cities, I would call them happier cities or happy cities, because that's the ultimate goal. And I would say, if you're a city leader, if you're a decision maker, that should be your only criteria. Yes, technology can help. Yes, technology can accelerate the path to a better quality of life. But if something as basic as a better e-governance infrastructure helps your citizens get a better quality of life, to me, I would rank that kind of a deployment, that kind of adoption of technology far above in the ranking than some measurement of investment and spending on technology infrastructure. And this may sound strange coming from somebody who's representing the technology industry, but unless we appreciate what our customers need and want from us, and unless we change our mindset to deliver that, I don't think we'll be successful. I think we'll be talking bits and bytes while people will be thinking cement and steel, if I take infrastructure as an example. And I think what we really need to do is merge those ways of thinking. So a couple of specific points of advice to quickly summarize, right? I would say we should always think big, we should start small and move fast. I would rather start a project, implement it quickly, learn from it, use it to gain traction, credibility with stakeholders, and the most important stakeholders are the citizens, than wait forever to start a mega project. I think public-private partnerships, absolutely a tool to accelerate. I think you find the right private sector partners who are keen on contributing to the communities they're living in. Right? I mean, our people live in the communities that we are servicing. So there is definitely a strong vested interest in helping these communities prosper. And finally, I would say, I think there's going to be a lot of new business models. We talked about I think one of the gentlemen in the audience asked the question about spending earlier on, right? A huge amount of CapEx spending. Well, I think we've been operating toll roads for forever. So we know how to convert a CapEx expenditure into operational expenditure. So I think that should bring out a whole host of new business models. And in the past, the source of funding was limited to banks. Now I think I see private equity firms stepping in and be willing to provide funding and upfront spending that's required to deploy this massive infrastructure, digital as well as physical, and get paid over time. So these are some of the examples. I mean, we could talk about data, we could talk about insights, but in the interest of time, let me just pause there.
So let me ask probably a final question, at least from me. And I'm going to ask you to put your transportation hat on now. Intelligent video analytics continue to play an increasingly important part in the transportation sector. Facial recognition, LPR, under vehicle surveillance, train carriage recognition. What's next? And what do you see as the rising star in intelligent transportation moving forward?
So I'll try and answer this question from a couple of angles, a technology angle and a market angle. We believe video as a sensor will continue to be the richest source of data for the foreseeable future. But we are starting to see video stream and video intelligence and data being supplemented more and more by capabilities through LiDAR and radar, and even audio inputs, although you could argue that most cameras have audio inputs already. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think as we think about video becoming more than something that you use to detect somebody jumping a red light or speeding, the sort of the basic use cases, and start thinking about it as the eyes and ears of our critical infrastructure, you also have to think about redundancy. You have to think about a fail-safe mechanism, and that's where these alternative ways of sensing come in. They will not replace video, they will supplement it. The second factor is that the cost for example, LiDAR is coming down very, very quickly and very sharply, especially with some step function changes like solid state LiDAR technologies being deployed. So I would say this notion of sensor fusion, I think is going to be, in our opinion, sort of the next big step. And we are investing heavily internally and with partners like ISS and with BCD and others to make sure we're putting out platforms that are optimized for these kind of workloads. The second thing that I think is definitely on the technology front accelerating is this collapsing or convergence of edge AI and 5G at the edge. I just got back from Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. The attendance was 3 times more than last year, but still half of pre-pandemic. But I can tell you the conversations were as rich as they used to be pre-pandemic. Telcos have spent billions of dollars buying spectrum, deploying all this equipment, and now they're eager to offer up new services, whether it's in manufacturing, retail, healthcare, cities, transportation. So that's the technology front. On the market front, I see strong adoption of video as a technology and sensor fusion capabilities in fleets, in airports, in railways, marine and smart ports. And I can give you a few quick examples because I know we have limited time today. In fleets, we are seeing aftermarket systems being used for things like driver behavior monitoring to detect if a driver is distracted or sleepy, to prevent theft of whatever cargo is on the vehicle, to do predictive maintenance. And all of this is being done by taking these inputs and putting them on a single consolidated, called an industrialized PC, a piece of smart edge compute. So we are working with some of the largest e-commerce companies, the largest delivery companies, and they're using these capabilities. One of the interesting use cases in the US is for e-commerce companies, they want to use AI to automatically detect address. And address labels come in all shapes, sizes, colors. So having an AI model trained to detect this variety is important, because one of the biggest costs of inefficiency in e-commerce delivery is delivering to the wrong address. And this may be, and this problem may vary, depending on the way housing is designed in different parts of the world. But in the US, it's a huge issue. In parts of Europe, it's a huge issue. If you go to now something like an airport, we know the major sources of revenue for an airport authority are the parking, the gate fees paid by the airlines, as well as the shopping that we tend to do at the retail shops while we're waiting. So how do you optimize the curb to gate experience? And how do you help the airport authorities maximize the revenue from these 3 sources? I think video analytics, some of the examples that were shared earlier around retail insights plays a key role. In trains, we are seeing things like passenger screen doors. We have a customer who's using video camera on top of the electric hook that attaches to the high voltage line for predictive maintenance. I could rattle off a couple of hundred more use cases, but I'll stop there again in the interest of time.
Listen, Sameer Sharma, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it enormously. If you'd like to join me in that appreciation, ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, perhaps.